And for those of you that want to know the tariffs, you've been hearing about tariffs, we're taking in almost $2 billion a day in tariffs, $2 billion a day. And we're doing very well. And we're doing very well in making, I call them tailored deals, not off the rack. These are tailored, highly tailored deals.
In fact, I thought this was a great piece in CNBC today, that an alert from Customs and Border Protection on Friday notified users of a glitch in the system that's used to exempt freight from tariffs. For now, that means that tariffs are not even being collected by the U.S. government. U.S. shippers tell CNBC they've not been charged higher tariff rates on their containers, some of which came in as late as yesterday. So we don't actually have the real thing happening.
Right. So two things.
Thank you. So I'll try to stick mostly to the big news of the day, which is on tariffs, trade, and foreign affairs. President Trump keeps saying that the U.S. has a $1 trillion trade deficit with China. That's about quadruple the actual figure, which was $263 billion last year. If you only count trade in goods and don't count trade in services, it's about $295 billion, so still nowhere close. President Trump also said again that during his first term, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China through his tariffs. As many of our colleagues keep pointing out, because we have to, all that revenue was paid by U.S. importers, and we know from study after study and just from talking to people in this country, most of those costs were passed on to U.S. consumers. He also repeated, Brianna, a bit of alternative history he keeps using, saying that the European Union was formed for the purpose of taking advantage of the United States. I spoke this week to an expert on European integration. He said not only is that wrong, it is completely detached from the actual history. European integration has long happened with the firm support of U.S. administrations from both parties. And he said that, talking about Japan, we defend them and spend billions of dollars. They don't pay anything. In fact, Japan does share the costs of the U.S. military presence in that country, paying billions of dollars per year.
They're saying you've got the AP reporting tariffs will make sneakers, jeans, and almost everything Americans wear cost more, trade groups warn. Work boots made in China that now retail for $77 would go up to $115. A pair of Chinese-made children's shoes that cost $26 today will likely carry a price tag of $41 by.
Caroline Levitt was asked just a few moments ago specifically whether President Trump would pick up the phone call to call Xi Jinping and begin these negotiations or begin a stand-down effort on the tit-for-tat tariffs. And while she skirted that direct question, there is no apparent conversations or dialogue happening between China and the U.S. at this time. But she said that she was optimistic that China would understand that they need the U.S. economy and they need to maintain their relations with America, and that ultimately that they would come and find a way to strike a deal. Of course, during Trump's first administration, negotiations for a phase one deal took almost 2 years. And the question here is, with tariffs now at 145% on Chinese goods coming into the United States and now 125% tariffs on U.S. goods going into China, you're talking about sky-high tariffs, which Chinese officials suggested overnight amounts to a near standstill of trading relations between the two nations, that these tariffs could not stand to go any higher, yet they have maintained that they are not going to back down. And so the question here is, will the United States begin to initiate that dialogue with China, or are we looking at a prolonged back and forth at a time that clearly the markets have suggested that simply 90-day pause for the other countries' trading partners, that the China trade war is still of top concern here for investors at home?
It's a huge deal. I mean, as you know, with the first trade war, agriculture has always been the crosshairs. But China showed the world that they didn't need U.S. soybeans. They actually started farming soybeans in Russia. In addition to this, in addition to the soybeans and other agriculture, you're looking at pharmaceuticals, electronics, oil, gas, and coal. And those are going to be slapped with the 125% tariff. And that effectively means that we're out of business there.
Experts are estimating that this trade war could cost the average household an extra $4,700 a year. And today, a new survey shows consumer sentiment has plunged 11% to the second lowest level it's been since 1952. That's before I was born, folks, so we're talking time ago. One economist telling CNBC consumers have spiraled from anxious to petrified. and that is being felt across the country.
So we have seen a big shift. So they trade more today with Southeast Asia than they do with the United States. They trade more with lots of other emerging markets than they do with the United States and Europe. So we've seen them begin to move away from the U.S. And while this will hit China hard, right? They send $460 billion worth of goods to the United States each year, which will fall down dramatically. They have been moving to other markets, and as they've moved into other markets and expanded their presence there, they've also expanded their presence in global trade. So they are making moves already to de-link themselves from the United States, and this will be really a break.
But Chinese officials are posting memes showing the price of knockoff Make America Great Again hats. By the way, folks out there, those of you in MAGA land, where do you think your hat comes from? It comes from China, baby.
Quote, there are no winners in a trade war, and going against the world will only lead to self-isolation. On Friday, according to CCTV's China state broadcaster, that's where this came out. He also said for over 70 years, China's development has relied on self-reliance and hard work, never on handouts from others, and it is not afraid of any unjust suppression.
China is hitting back on President Trump's tariff hike, saying, they're raising tariffs on the U.S. imports as well, from 84% to 125%, and mocking Trump's policy as a joke.
Everybody wants to come and make a deal, and we're working with a lot of different countries, and it's all going to work out very well. I think it's going to work out really very well. We think we're in very good shape. We think we're doing very well. Again, there'll be a transition cost and transition problems, but in the end, it's going to be a beautiful